Chapter 24. Disappearing dwarfs? Sophie asked, feeling foolish just saying it. She was tempted to ask if they were journeying with a hobbit to reclaim the lonely mountain, but the blood on Grady's cheek kind of killed all her jokes. How do dwarves disappear? She asked. That's exactly what I'm trying to figure out. Though I can't say I'm making much progress. Evidently, they've gone missing one by one over the last year, and the dwarves didn't think to mention it to us until they realized that 30 have vanished. 30? Adeline whispered. Is that a bad number? Sophie asked. Not the number specifically, but the last time we took a census, there were only 329 dwarves in the whole world. They're solitary creatures, very scattered. So for 30 to go missing is, well, we definitely like to know what's going on, which is why I've been stuck crawling around their cramped tunnels for days, getting scrapped and scratched and finding nothing. It's like they vanished into the ground and never came back out of air. What about the black swan? Sophie asked. They have dwarves secretly working with them. Maybe they have 30? I thought of that already, but I asked King Enki about them, and he said the dwarves working with the black swan are all accounted for and checking in regularly. So wait, does that mean they could take us to the black swan? Sophie asked. More than likely, but don't get your hopes up. The king wouldn't tell me who they are, and we can't force him. The guidelines of a treaty state only that the dwarves must work peacefully with the elves, and the black swan are elves, so the dwarves are well within their rights of privacy. What does that mean then? Adeline asked before Sophie could. Someone is stealing dwarves? They might be running away, or perhaps they are all on a very extended vacation, or they could be getting abducted. We don't know. And before you assume the worst, he added, turning to Sophie, keep in mind that the mysteries like this happen way more often than we realize. I'd forgotten just how much like the council deals with on a daily basis. This world is filled with complicated creatures and complicated problems. There's always someone, somewhere, having some sort of crisis. This is just business as usual. Not if you consider what's been going on with the orcs, Sander interrupted. Sophie uncovered something rather disturbing evidence yesterday, and I fear it might be related to your mystery. She did? Adeline asked, her expression a mix of hurt and disappointment as she turned to Sophie. Why haven't I heard anything about this? Well, for one thing, Sophie said, glaring at Sandor, we don't know for sure that orcs are involved. No one knows what any of it means. You still could have told me, Adeline said gently. I know. Sophie stared at the dust mote swirling in the air while she explained about the Aramark and the homing device and Lady Cadence's effluxers at Foxfire. She even told him about the leak in the Black Swan. The only thing she kept secret were her theories about Jolie. Grady's sigh sounded more like a groan as he ran his hands down his face, smearing the blood from his cut. I don't think I have the energy to deal with any of this right now. Sophie didn't either, honestly. Orcs and goblins, and missing dwarves. Her life had officially turned into a fairy tale gone wrong. Hey, Grady said, strangling her with a hug. Everything always looks worse after a long day. Let's all get some sleep and regroup tomorrow, okay? Sophie nodded, trying not to think about angry orcs and missing dwarves as she stumbled up to her messy bedroom. But as Iggy flitted to her pillow and curled up in his tangle of orange fluff, she couldn't help feeling just as small as him. Her world and its problems were so much bigger than she'd ever imagined, and she couldn't shake the horrible feeling that this time no one could solve them. Hey, Sophie said as she caught up with Marilla in the level 3 atrium. The locker-lined quad was humongous, decorated with glittering crystal teas and a giant Macedonian statue in the center. But it felt strangely small when Marilla didn't smile back at her. You okay? Sophie asked. I couldn't find you at orientation. Marilla said nothing as she licked the sensor to open her locker, waiting until she'd grabbed all her books before she mumbled. I'm surprised you noticed I was gone. Why wouldn't I? No reason. Marilla tossed the tiny braids she'd worn into her hair as she turned to face Sophie. She looked more like her old self again, except for the scowl on her lips. Is this about Biana? Sophie asked. Why would I care about her? I don't know. You've been a little different since she manifested. Oh, so you think I'm jealous? I never said that. Sophie kept her voice low, wishing they could have this conversation somewhere without so many staring prodigies. Marilla slammed her locker much harder than she needed to. Good. And I don't care that she's suddenly in on all your secret stuff either, in case that's what in case that's what you're thinking. I wasn't, Sophie promised. Good, Marilla repeated. Because I won't get sucked into a drama, even if you wanted me to. It's way too dangerous. She stalked away before Sophie could respond. Not that she knew what to say. Stina applauded. You know, I never thought I'd say this, but I'm starting to like that Reddick girl, she told her minions as she followed Sophie over to her locker. At least she's smart enough not to let you drag her down with you. No one's getting dragged anywhere, Sophie muttered. No, the Waka losers are going voluntarily. And don't even get me started on Disney. She pointed to Sophie's ring and mimed gagging. Tell me, who's going to be the next casualty? I mean, Dex already had one planting, and from what I hear, Keith came pretty close to needing one himself. So who gets it this time? My money's on Fids. The healing's on Friday, right? Anyone else thinking we might not see him after that? No one raised their hands, but Sophie could tell some of them wanted to. Most of them, actually. Is there a problem, Miss Foster? Dame Melina asked, striding toward them with a dramatic sweep of her cape. It looked like Miss Hex was bothering you. Sophie had never seen Dame Melina in the atrium, and she glanced over her shoulder, wondering if there was some sort of surveillance camera she was missing. And the snotty smirk on Stina's lips made it so tempting to get her in trouble, but that would only cause her more drama, especially since everything Stina had said was technically true. Being friends with Sophie was dangerous, and Sophie was just as worried about Fritz as everyone else seemed to be. We were just talking. She mumbled to her defeat. Dame Melina sighed, clearly not convinced, but when Sophie didn't say anything else, she clapped her hands and ordered everyone to get to their sessions. Come on, girls, Tina told her minions. She grinned at Sophie as she tossed her giant hair. Let's go find Redding and see if she wants to sit with us at lunch today. Actually, you still have detention, Dame Melina called after her. And I think it might be best if you spend it with me today. What? Stina asked, whipping back around. Dame Melina smiled. I'll be waiting for you in my office. But I didn't do anything wrong. I never said you did. Stina's eyes narrowed to slits, but she kept her mouth shut as she turned and stormed away. Sophie leaned against her locker, letting the cold of the metal sink into her flushed skin. You didn't have to do that, she told Dame Melina. I'm fine. I'm sure you are. But I still think it's high time Miss Hex and I have a nice little chat. And you'd better get going, Miss Foster. You still have quite the long walk to your session, and the bell chimed right on schedule. Sophie groaned, throwing the satchel over her shoulder as she raced down the hall. Her morning session was in the Silver Tower, and she picked the worst mentor to be tardy for. She was soaked with sweat by the time she pounded on the gleaming door, shouting for Master Leto to let her in. Are you okay? He asked as she rushed past him. She scrambled to put on a silver cape, feeling her eyes burn when she accidentally stabbed her finger with the pin. She squeezed them tight, ordering herself not to cry, but she felt a tear leak down her cheek. Here, Master Leto said, taking her hand and cleaning the blood off her finger with a silky handkerchief. She waited for him to let go, but he leaned closer, squinting at Dex's ring before tracing his finger over her star-shaped scar. Looks like you've had an interesting few weeks. Didn't say it like a question, but Sophie nodded anyway. Well, I know it does not change any of the things you're facing, but I hope you know that you're not alone. Right. She had friends she could put in danger. Just what she always wanted. I mean it, Miss Foster. I'm sure you're hearing the same whispers that I am, but that does not speak for everyone, and the rest will understand with time. I hope so, she said, trying to hand back his handkerchief. Keep it, and let me solve one other problem as well. He placed a plain blue square of glass in her palm. Show this to Counselor Bronte, and you'll be off the hook for your tardiness. It should also make him go easy on you today, and if he doesn't, call for me. The glass was cool to the touch, but it turned warm as she tucked it safely into her pocket. She meant to ask him what it was, but why are you helping me? Slipped out instead. Master Leto smiled. It's part of my job, Sophie, to give light when it's needed, and brighten up a bad day. Why else do you think they call me the Beacon? She'd honestly had no idea, and always thought it was a stupid title, but maybe it fit better than she thought. Maybe even if she still hated calling him Master. Well, thank you, she mumbled. He opened the door to the empty common room, and she made her way to the stairs, wishing her session wasn't on the very top floor. There's a faster way, Master Leto told her as she climbed the first step, but you're going to have to hold on tight. He stomped his foot, making a rubbly thump, and Sophie barely managed to grab the gleaming banister before the silver stairway spun to life, whirling faster than Keith's Watinator. She spun sideways and slantways and upside down through all the twists and turns of the stairways. By the time she reached the top, she was fairly certain she'd never be able to eat again, assuming she survived the next 2 hours. She needed several deep breaths to stop her head from spinning, but her nausea came crashing back as she stumbled into the dim room. Councillor Bronte was waiting for her in the room's only chair, a fancy silver throne that matched his fancy cape and crown. He definitely looked ready to inflict some serious pain.